Ha llegado la hora del terror. El reloj marca la medianoche, la hora más temida por aquellos que conocen las verdaderas pesadillas. Aquí, cada minuto que pasa te arrastra más profundamente hacia un universo dominado por horrores indescriptibles y terrores sin nombre. Las historias que escucharás romperán todas las barreras de tu imaginación, atrapándote en un ciclo infinito de miedo. No intentes huir. Esta hora es inevitable y el terror que despierta te seguirá por siempre. A suture of tarmac stitched across the void, vanishing into Nevada's swallowing dark. My own headlamps bored tunnels through the gloom, illuminating only the asphalt ribbon unwinding ahead in the skeletal dance of roadside brush. Just another pre-dawn haul, I'd presumed. Another crossing etched into the 15 years I'd piloted these rolling behemoths. Reese Calder, they call me, steeped in the solitude of the long haul since my hands first legally gripped such a wheel. The night roads whispered tales, and I'd collected my share of oddities, spun from moonlight and fatigue. Yet nothing, truly nothing, braced me for the hours unfolding on Route 50 that night. It began subtly, perhaps 2 hours past midnight. 6 hours wrestled from the highway between Salt Lake and Sacramento, time slipping smoothly. Inside the cab of my Kenworth, only the engine's resonant thrum and the CB's intermittent sigh disturbed the quiet. I drifted in that familiar liminal space known to all night drivers. Perception blurred, consciousness submerged just beneath the surface. Just the machine, the immense dark, and me. Then, twin stars ignited in my rear view. Unremarkable at first, another traveler braving the desolate hours. But minutes bled into a slow, dripping hour, and the lights held position with unsettling precision. A phantom echo. My speed fluctuated, theirs mirrored it perfectly. A knot of wrongness tightened in my gut. My thumb depressed the CB transmit button. Breaker channel 19er. This is Iron Pilgrim. Got a shadow keeping pace back here. Anyone savvy? Over. The reply was pure, dead air. Not even the usual crackle of distance. I squinted into the mirrors. The lights remained, steady, patient. Some jittery tourist, maybe, I murmured, the words thin against the engine's drone, trying to dispel the chill creeping up my spine. Another hour crawled past, marked only by the mileposts flashing by. The vehicle clung to my wake like a remora. I tried accelerating, then deliberately slowing. I even feigned mechanical trouble, pulling into a starkly lit rest area. The car shadowed my exit, halting just beyond the reach of the sodium lamps. A deeper patch of darkness within the night. The moment my rig lumbered back onto the highway, its spectral presence resumed position behind me. Sweat slicked my palms on the wheel. This transcended caution or coincidence. I cycled through CB channels, broadcasting blind. Silence answered, profound and absolute. Then the true strangeness began. Amidst a particularly bleak stretch where the desert felt ancient and watchful, the pursuing headlights simply vanished. A flicker of relief, instantly extinguished. Headlights bloomed anew, this time in my side mirror. The car now ran parallel, effortlessly matching my speed. My heart hammered against my ribs. I risked a glance across the short distance separating us. The windows were opaque, perfect rectangles of black reflecting the indifferent stars. What in God's name do you want? The shout was swallowed by the cab, unheard, yet necessary. As if responding, the vehicle surged forward, slipping neatly ahead of my truck. Now I saw it clearly. An older model, sleek, vaguely 70s, yet its lines defied easy identification. And its color. It wasn't merely painted black. It was a hue that seemed to drink the beams from my headlights. A void given automotive form. Panic, cold and sharp, began to fray my nerves. I snatched the CB mic again. Mayday, Mayday, Iron Pilgrim, Reese Calder, Route 50 near marker 2M57. Vehicle harassment, hostile intent. Anyone read me? Mayday. The radio hissed, then erupted. Not with a voice, but with a sound that turned my blood to ice water. A low, undulating hum, interwoven with rhythmic clicks and guttural utterances, syllables from no human tongue. The bizarre transmission pulsed for several seconds, then ceased as abruptly as it began. Into the ensuing silence bled a new sound, a high-frequency whine emanating from the black car ahead. I watched, stupefied, as the metal at its rear seemed to liquefy, flowing, reshaping itself. From the trunk area, something extended, a segmented metallic limb reaching back towards my grill. Oh, hell no. The spell broke. Instinct slammed my foot onto the brakes. 40 tons of rig screamed in protest, tires tearing at the asphalt as I brought the behemoth to a shuddering halt. The black car shot past, its strange appendage closing on empty air where my truck had been moments before. It skidded to a stop, perhaps 100 yards down the road, its silhouette seeming to shimmer, to waver in my headlight glare. Stillness descended. My hands strangled the steering wheel, knuckles white flags against the dark. My mind scrabbled, failing to categorize the impossible thing I'd witnessed. Then slowly, deliberately, the driver's side door of the black car swung open. A figure unfolded itself into the night, and the last vestiges of rational explanation dissolved within me. It was humanoid, yes, but stretched impossibly tall, unnaturally slender. Its movements possessed a liquid grace that felt fundamentally wrong, like a poorly mastered puppet. As it pivoted towards me, I saw its face, or the lack thereof. A smooth, featureless expanse of polished obsidian stared back, reflecting the distorted image of my truck. Thought bypassed conscious control. Raw survival reflex took over. I jammed the gear shift into reverse, tires spinning, backing the rig away with reckless speed. The figure began to advance, its gait eerily smooth, deceptively fast. I wrestled the wheel, shifting into drive, swinging the truck around in a wide arc across the empty lanes, thanking some nameless providence for the deserted highway. I floored the accelerator, pushing the engine into a tormented roar, demanding speed the truck was never built for. My mirrors showed the black car in pursuit, closing the distance with unnatural velocity. The CB flared to life, unbidden, the alien hum and clicking speech flooding the cab again. I ripped the mic cord from its socket, flung it to the floor, but the sound persisted, seeming to emanate from the very air around me. The black car was terrifyingly close now, that mechanical arm extending once more, grasping towards my trailer. The speedometer needle was buried, the engine screaming its agony. But it wasn't enough. Then, a glimmer ahead, piercing the oppressive dark. The scattered lights of a town. Hope, fierce and desperate, surged through me. I had no idea where I was, didn't care. Civilization meant eyes, witnesses, sanctuary. I leaned on the air horn, its bellowing cry shatter in the night as I hurtled towards the town's edge, praying someone would see. As I slewed the rig around a corner onto a main street, I risked a final glance back. The black car was gone, vanished. I stomped on the brakes again, the truck fishtailing to a halt before a small, brightly lit diner. Inside faces turned, startled by my chaotic arrival. For a long moment I just sat, sucking air, chest heaving, waiting for the obsidian car to reappear. It didn't. The street behind me lay empty, silent, save for the metallic ticking of my cooling engine. My legs felt like water as I climbed down. A couple of men emerged from the diner, their expressions a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Everything okay there, driver?" one asked, his voice calm. "Came in here like the devil himself was on your tail." I opened my mouth, the story clawing its way up my throat, but the words died. Who would believe such a tale? I thought my brakes were failing," I managed, the lie tasting like ash. "Got a little spooked. Sorry about the noise." They nodded, their immediate concern eased, and drifted back inside. I leaned heavily against the cool metal flank of my trailer, the adrenaline leaving me shaky and nauseous. Was it a hallucination? A waking nightmare born of exhaustion and isolation? Then my eyes fell upon it. There, on the trailer's side panel, precisely where the metallic limb had reached, was an imprint. Not of a hand, not human. Too many digits, long and slender, pressed deep into the aluminum as if the metal had momentarily possessed the yielding softness of clay. I stared, the reality of it crashing down. No explaining this away, no refuge in fatigue-induced fantasy. The thing in the dark, the hunter on the lonely road, was real, and a chilling certainty settled deep in my bones. It wasn't finished. Climbing back into the familiar confines of my cab, my hand still trembled. A silent promise formed. I would seek answers, because the open road, the vast silent stretches that had been my refuge for so long, were no longer empty. They were hunting grounds, and something inhuman was out there, watching, waiting. My sanctuary had become a place of profound terror. As I eased the truck back onto the highway, driving towards the faint suggestion of dawn, I knew with sickening clarity that the nightmare hadn't ended. It had only just begun. The realization struck, not like a thunderclap, but like ice water seeping through stone. The rhythm shadowing my own footfalls belonged to someone else. My midnight escape had just curdled into dread. By then, retreat was unthinkable. Nocturne was my element. I thrived in the city's hushed after-hours persona, the urban sprawl breathing softly beneath the blanket of stars, which is why the night run became my ritual. Emptier thoroughfares, cooler air, the day's clamor dissolving into a distant mechanical sigh, and the rare startling cry of an owl. This night promised the same solace. Laced trainers, buds nestled in ears, the crisp autumn air a familiar embrace under a sovereign moon that silvered the pavement and stretched familiar shapes into alien forms. My habitual circuit commenced, guiding me toward the park's dark embrace. Streetlights sputtered overhead as I passed beneath, their intermittent flashes painting the world in stroboscopic bursts that teased the edges of vision. A familiar phenomenon, barely registered as I synced my breath to the cadence of my shoes striking asphalt. Only upon entering the park did a dissonance register. Usually deserted at this hour, barring a solitary figure huddled on a bench or a stray dog walker. Tonight, it felt expectant. A peculiar stillness hung heavy, a charge in the air like static before a storm. Nerves, I reasoned, the phantom limb of pre-marathon anxiety. A significant race loomed, fraying my composure for days. I urged my legs faster, breath pluming rhythmically as I curved around the grand, silent fountain anchoring the park's center. That's when the counterpoint began. Footfalls, subtly out of sync with my own. A glance flung backward revealed only lunar-bleached emptiness, shadows clinging to the familiar path. Frowning, I eased my stride. The pursuing steps mirrored the deceleration. My pulse, already a working drum from exertion, hammered against my ribs with newfound urgency. Paranoia, a familiar ghost, whispered insidious suggestions. Yet rounding the willow curve, the sound gained substance, louder now, undeniably other. A sharp pivot. Nothing. The path stretched behind me, vacant and silent under the moon's cold scrutiny. Only my own breath, ragged and loud, tore the silence. Hello? The question vanished, small and fragile, swallowed by the park's vast indifference. I stood frozen, straining, listening. Only the sibilance of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze, the remote bark of a dog. Shaking my head, a dismissal aimed more at myself than any real threat, I turned to resume my run. Instantly, the pursuit recommenced, faster now, urgent, closing the distance. Panic ignited, a cold fire in my chest. I sprinted, lungs searing, asphalt blurring beneath pounding feet, desperate for the park exit. The footfalls quickened, matching my frantic pace, amplifying with each stride. A backward glimpse, snatched in terror. A silhouette, fluid and dark at vision's edge, keeping pace with unnerving, effortless ease. Harder, faster, I ran, muscles screaming, lungs burning. The sanctuary of well-lit streets beckoned, but regardless of my speed, the steps clung, never lagging, never quite overtaking. Nearing the park gates, a sharp stitch pierced my side, forcing a falter. The footsteps drew closer. Heavy breathing, not my own, rasped just behind me. I burst through the gates onto the sidewalk, nearly colliding with a startled couple tethered to a small dog. A breathless apology tumbled out as I surged past, not daring to pause or look back. "Hey, are you okay?" The man's voice pursued me, but I was already dissolving into the downstream block. Directionless flight ensued, random turns down anonymous streets, attempting to shake the unseen pursuer in the urban labyrinth. Yet irrespective of my route, the footfalls persisted, sometimes fading, offering a sliver of hope, only to surge back, sounding terrifyingly close, right at my heels. My thoughts raced alongside my feet. Who? Why? No suspicious figures lingered when I'd left my apartment. Had they waited, lurking within the park's shadowed heart? The notion sent a fresh deluge of terror cascading through me. A narrow fissure between buildings beckoned. A shortcut, a gamble, fatal error. Deeper dark swallowed the limited moonlight, the towering walls pressing close. Mid-passage, disaster, a stumble over unseen refuse, a box, debris, indistinguishable, sent me sprawling. Impact slammed the air from my lungs, rough asphalt tearing at palms and knees. For a disoriented moment, I lay stunned. Then I heard it. The steps, slow now, deliberate, entering the alley's mouth. Scrabbling upright, pain a dull throb, the horrifying truth slammed home. A dead end, barred by a skeletal chain-link fence. Trapped. The steps advanced, unhurried. I spun, back pressed to the cold, unyielding metal. Who's there? My voice a thin thread attempting defiance. I'm warning you, I've called the police. No response. Only the steady, implacable tread, growing louder, nearer. Frantically, my eyes scanned the grime for a weapon. A fractured length of pipe lay amongst the detritus. I snatched it, brandishing it awkwardly. "Stay back," I yelled, the words trembling. "I'm armed." The footsteps ceased. Silence descended, thick and suffocating. Then slowly a figure emerged from the deeper shadows at the alley's entrance. My grip tightened on the makeshift weapon as the form drew closer. In the abysmal light, features remained elusive. It was pure silhouette, tall and imbued with menace. It halted mere feet away, close enough for me to register its breathing. Slow, even utterly unperturbed by the preceding chase. "What do you want?" I managed, the tremor in my voice betraying my fragile bravado. The figure tilted its head, an almost inquisitive gesture. Then stunningly, it spoke, the voice oddly resonant, familiar beneath the distortion of fear. "I want you to wake up, Ilara." I blinked, adrift in confusion. "What?" "Wake up," it repeated, the tone sharpening into undeniable recognition. "You're having a nightmare." Abruptly, the alley walls wavered, blurred, dissolved like watercolor in rain. The figure before me shifted, shrank, its threatening aura evaporating. A hand, warm and real, rested on my shoulder, shaking gently. "Ilara, honey, wake up. You're having a bad dream." My eyes snapped open, gasping air. Bedroom. Morning light filtered softly through the familiar curtains. Leo sat beside me, his face etched with concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, his hand rubbing my back in a soothing rhythm. "You were thrashing around and mumbling." Disorientation clung. I looked around the room, the safe harbor of home. No tenebrous alleys, no relentless pursuer. I had a nightmare," I rasped, my voice raw. "I was running, and something was chasing me." Leo pulled me into a comforting embrace. "It's okay," he murmured against my hair. "You're safe now. It was just a dream." As my racing heart gradually subsided, I nodded, releasing a shaky breath. "Yeah, just a dream." But as Leo rose, heading toward the promise of coffee, a residue of unease lingered, cold and persistent. The dream's verisimilitude had been absolute. Those phantom footfalls still echoed in the chambers of my mind. Slipping out of bed, I moved to the window, parting the curtain to gaze upon the quiet street below. Normality reigned. Dog walkers ambled. Early joggers traced determined paths. A delivery truck rumbled past. Then for an infinitesimal second, my breath caught. A figure, perfectly static on the opposite pavement, looking directly up at my window. I blinked, and it was gone. Just imagination's residue, I insisted silently, letting the curtain fall back. Leftover adrenaline from the night terror. Yet turning away from the window, conviction felt hollow. Because in that fleeting instant, the figure's posture, its stillness, had resonated with an unsettling familiarity. It mirrored the silhouette from the alley. I shook my head, attempting to dispel the final cobwebs of sleep and fear. It was just a dream, I repeated, a mantra against the lingering chill. Just a dream. Deep down, however, a sliver of doubt remained, a question mark etched against the morning light. And as I made my way toward the kitchen, toward Leo and the comforting aroma of coffee, I found myself listening, unconsciously straining for a rhythm not my own. The second their eyes shifted, voided somehow, I felt the floor drop out from under the world. What began as just another Tuesday grind at the Rusty Mug dissolved, instantly, into a waking nightmare etched forever behind my eyelids. Had I just trusted that prickle of unease, locked the doors an hour sooner, maybe the unspeakable could have been averted. Finn's the name. I've slung drinks and wiped down this sticky counter at the Mug for nearly 10 years. It's a dive, no question, but a familiar one, populated by regulars who feel almost like kin. Even the sporadic bursts of trouble were manageable, or so I'd believed until that night descended. Tuesday, usually dead. The Titans game droned from the corner television, a backdrop to the low grumbles of the few patrons nursing their pints. I was polishing the bar top, half-tuned to old Silas's latest yarn about government satellites, when the front door swung inward. The quartet that entered immediately snagged the attention, tightening something cold in my chest. 3 men, 1 woman, clad in dark fabrics, too sharp, too clean for our worn establishment. They moved with a disquieting synchronicity, sliding into a shadowed booth without exchanging a glance or a word. Across the room, Clara, juggling a tray, caught my gaze and offered a minute shrug. The newcomers unsettled her, too. Smoothing my apron, a useless ritual of normalcy, I ambled over. "Evening," I managed, stretching my lips into the practiced bartender's smile. "What can I bring you?" No immediate answer. Instead, 4 heads swiveled toward me in perfect, unnerving unison. Their faces were masks, utterly blank. A tremor traced its way up my spine, but I held my professional ground. Finally, the woman spoke, her voice a monotone, scraped clean of inflection. 4 glasses, your house red. A nod, tight and forced against the rising dread coiling in my gut. Right away, walking back to the bar, I felt their collective stare like a physical weight on my shoulders, tracking every step. My hands trembled as I poured the cheap Merlot, slopping a few crimson drops onto the worn wood. "You all right there, Finn?" Silas peered at me, his spectacles magnifying his concern. "Look like you swallowed a bad oyster." I manufactured a short laugh. "Just dragging tonight, Silas. Long one." I carried the glasses back, setting them down with deliberate care. The group remained statuesque, utterly still. They didn't reach for the wine, didn't acknowledge its presence, just stared forward, eyes fixed on some unseen point beyond the grimy walls. Time crawled. One by one, the regulars drained their glasses and drifted out into the night, leaving only me, Clara, old Silas, and the silent quartet in the corner booth. The quiet thickened, becoming heavy, suffocating, punctuated only by the television's low hum and the occasional clink of glass. Closing time loomed. I was debating how to politely nudge the strange party out when Clara gasped, a sharp, terrified sound. I whipped around. She was pointing, hand trembling, eyes wide with disbelief and horror, at the booth. They were changing. It began, as I'd first sensed, with the eyes. Irises dilated rapidly, bleeding outwards, swallowing the whites until only bottomless obsidian pits remained. Their skin seemed to writhe, rippling like water disturbed, shifting to a corpse-like, grayish hue. And their mouths, Christ, their mouths, stretched, splitting impossibly wide, peeling back into ghastly smiles packed tight with rows of razor-sharp teeth. I staggered back, colliding with a stack of pint glasses. The resulting crash shattered the stunned silence. Silas choked out a strangled cry, scrambling wildly for the exit. But one of them, thinking of them as people, was no longer possible. Blurred across the room, moving with a speed that defied sight. Its hand clamped around Silas's throat, hoisting him clean off the floor with effortless, monstrous strength. Silas's legs kicked feebly, a frantic, useless dance against the inevitable. "Leave him!" I roared, snatching a heavy whiskey bottle from the back bar. A pathetic gesture, I knew, but paralysis wasn't an option. The creature swiveled its head, that horrific rictus grin unwavering. It spoke, and the sound wasn't just a voice, but a vibration in the air, guttural, seeming to emanate from the very shadows. "We hunger," it rasped, "and you will sate us." A sickening, wet crunch echoed as its grip tightened. I watched, frozen in horror, as the light extinguished in my old friend's eyes, his body slumping, lifeless in the creature's grasp. Clara screamed, a raw sound that jolted me back. I vaulted the bar, grabbing her arm, yanking her toward the rear service door. "Run!" I yelled, shoving her ahead. We burst into the narrow, garbage-strewn alley, the cool night air a shocking contrast to the claustrophobic terror inside. Relief was fleeting. We hadn't covered 10 feet before another creature simply materialized from the deepest shadows directly in our path. Clara skidded, almost falling, veering away. We spun, desperate, only to find the other end of the alley blocked by a second monster. Trapped? My thoughts raced, a frantic scramble for any escape. The old cellar hatch, hidden behind that leaning tower of empty kegs. A long shot, ancient and rusted, but the only one left. "This way!" I shouted, pulling Clara toward the metal heap. We clawed at the kegs, the screech of metal on concrete deafening in the sudden quiet. The creatures advanced, gliding with that unnatural, fluid grace. Their breathing, ragged and starved, grew louder, closer. Finally, the double doors lay exposed. I wrenched them upward, the hinges screaming in protest. "In!" I urged, practically throwing Clara down the steep, narrow stairs. I tumbled in after her, slamming the heavy wooden doors shut just as claws raked violently across the exterior. My fingers, clumsy with terror, fumbled with the corroded padlock until it finally clicked shut. We huddled in the absolute blackness of the cellar, the frantic scrabbling and splintering wood from above our only company. The doors groaned under the assault. They wouldn't hold long. "What are they?" Clara whispered, her voice shaking uncontrollably. I shook my head, a useless gesture in the dark. "Don't know, but we need another way out." We groped blindly through the subterranean space, stumbling over forgotten crates and dust-shrouded furniture. My hand brushed against cold metal, a heavy-duty flashlight. I thumbed it on, the beam slicing through the oppressive gloom. And then we saw it, scrawled across the far, damp stone wall, written in something dark, crusted, disturbingly like dried blood, were words that burned themselves into my memory. "They come when the veil is thin. Salt and iron will hold them back, but only the dawn can drive them away." "What's it mean?" Clara breathed. Before I could hazard a guess, a tremendous crash resonated from the top of the stairs. They were through. Pure instinct took over. I snatched an old iron fireplace poker leaning against the wall. Nearby, I spotted a half-used bag of rock salt, likely forgotten after last winter's ice. I tossed it to Clara. "Make a circle," I commanded, my voice tight. "Around us, now." She didn't hesitate, frantically pouring the coarse white crystals in a wide perimeter. I stood braced with the poker, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The creatures descended the stairs, their movements jerky, disjointed, wrong. Reaching the cellar floor, their black hole eyes fixed on us with raw, predatory hunger. But as they shambled toward the salt line, they stopped abruptly, recoiling as if hitting an unseen barrier. They paced the circle's edge, emitting low, frustrated growls, unable to cross. For what felt like an eternity, we stood trapped within our fragile boundary, watching them test the line. Each time their gray flesh touched the salt, they flinched back as if scorched. The iron poker, too, seemed to possess a repellent quality. When one lunged too close, I swung it, and the thing hissed, retreating from the metal's proximity. As the endless night crawled onward, a subtle change began. Their movements grew sluggish, their coordination fraying. Their forms seemed to thin, becoming disturbingly translucent. Then as the very first, faint fingers of dawn light pierced the grimy high windows of the cellar, the creatures emitted a unified, unearthly shriek. Their bodies dissolved, wavering like heat haze, then evaporating entirely, melting into nothingness like mist touched by the morning sun. Gone. No trace left behind. Clara and I remained within the salt circle until the sun climbed fully into the sky, bathing the cellar in weak light, too shaken to move, too terrified to believe it was over. When we finally forced ourselves up the stairs, the bar was a scene of utter devastation. Furniture lay splintered and overturned. Shattered glass carpeted the floor, and poor Silas's body remained sprawled where he had fallen. We called the authorities, naturally, but the truth? How could we possibly articulate the night's horrors? We mumbled something about a robbery, a violent struggle. They looked skeptical, but what else could we say? Clara walked away from the mug that day. I couldn't fault her. The thought crossed my mind to sell up, get out, forget. But something holds me here. A sense of obligation, perhaps, to stand guard. Or maybe just sheer bloody-minded refusal to let them win. I've made adjustments. Lines of salt guard every threshold now. Heavy iron horseshoes hang above the doors. I lock up long before midnight, especially when the air feels thin, expectant. But sometimes, late in the evening, a new group might enter, moving just a fraction too smoothly, their eyes holding a darkness that runs too deep. And the cold dread returns, reminding me of the terrible knowledge gained that night. The monsters sometimes wear familiar faces, and when darkness falls, they hunger. That relic wasn't meant to stir. Before surrendering to exhaustion, I had meticulously severed every umbilical cord I could trace, even wrestling the stiff rotary dial to confirm its inertness. Yet precisely as the clock hand struck 2, its strident metallic shriek ripped through the quietude of my office. Not a gentle chime, but a clamorous bell, resonant with the ghosts of old cinema, jolting me from the shallow doze I'd fallen into in my chair. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I remained frozen, eyes fixed across the dim space. There it sat, a black sentinel on the desk beneath the weak halo of the single lamp I'd left burning by the window. I didn't rise immediately. I waited, suspended in disbelief, praying for the cacophony to cease. It persisted. Propelled by a reluctant dread, I traversed the room, each step a tremor traveling up my legs. My mouth was parchment dry. I realized I was holding my breath, a captive animal anticipating the snare. Finally, lifting the heavy bakelite receiver, my ear met a low, crackling static. A faulty line, perhaps. But beneath the hiss, another sound emerged, breathing, ragged and uneven, the desperate rhythm of someone stifling speech yet failing. I listened, pulse thudding like a trapped bird. The strained respiration continued for an agonizing few seconds, tightening the skin across my scalp. Then faint yet unmistakable, my name, Elias, whispered through the static, a sound mangled, as if forced through a constricted throat. "Hello," I managed, my voice thin. Silence answered. The line fell dead. Replacing the receiver, I retreated, rubbing the sudden chill from my arms. Logic scrabbled for purchase, a misdial, a phantom telemarketer. But the explanation dissolved against the stark reality. The phone possessed no connection to the wall. Had I missed something? A hidden wire? I spun the heavy base around, scrutinizing its every facet. Nothing. Just the thick, coiled tether linking handset to base. No lifeline to the outside world, no power source. It simply existed, defiant. I stood there, tracing its contours, a knot tightening in my gut, the acrid taste of bile rising. Discard it? Lock it away? No, I decided. Exhaustion overriding fear. Morning would bring clarity. I slumped onto the office couch, extinguished the lamp, and willed the tremors to subside. Sleep offered only fleeting refuge. Perhaps 30 minutes later, the bell struck again. A single sharp, abbreviated ring. I shot upright, flooding the room with light. Silence descended once more. I watched the phone, a coiled predator in the sudden brightness, waiting for it to repeat its call. It remained still. A clammy sweat broke across my skin. Enough. My apartment was only a few blocks distant. Locking the office door behind me, I fled into the night, deliberately pushing the impossible encounter from my thoughts. The following morning found me back early, drawn by a morbid need for answers. The phone, an heirloom from my grandfather's dusty estate, usually served as a quaint conversation piece. Paranoia, I reasoned. Sleep deprivation conjuring auditory phantoms. Yet the chilling intimacy of that ragged breathing echoed too vividly. I inverted the device, prying open the small panel on its underside. Dust motes danced in the revealing light, exposing antiquated wiring, frayed at the edges. I searched for a hidden battery, some trickster's mechanism. Nothing but old, inert mechanics. No power, no deceit. I spun the rotary dial. Its soft, rhythmic clicks were the only sound. Replacing the panel, I resolved to ignore it, placing it back on the desk. That night, work demanded my presence again. A looming deadline necessitated focus, and perversely I felt the need to test the silence. I confirmed its isolation from any wall socket, then relocated it to a shadowed corner beside the filing cabinets. Midnight passed. I brewed coffee, immersed myself in documents. The office remained blessedly quiet until 2 a.m. The metallic clangor erupted, so violent it seemed to vibrate within my very skull. My palms grew slick. Rising, I approached the corner, lifted the receiver, static, dense, and suffocating. Then the whisper, insidious, repeating my name. Elias. I nearly dropped the handset. Who is this? The words fractured as I spoke. More whispers followed, fragmented syllables coalescing into disturbing imagery. A place of dim illumination, slick floors, the word corridor. Gooseflesh prickled my arms. I dreamt of such a place, a long passage flickering into darkness, a nightmare I'd shared with no one. The voice murmured of dripping water, walls blooming with mold, the scent of rotten wood, details ripped directly from my subconscious terrors. My breath hitched. A painful pulse throbbed at my temples. "Stop!" I choked out, slamming the receiver onto its cradle. I leaned heavily against the desk, hands pressed flat, seeking anchorage as my legs turned to water. No more nights in the office. I fled, finding little solace in my apartment, where sleep remained elusive for hours. Dawn brought renewed determination. I would dismantle the cursed thing. I removed the handset entirely, unscrewed its casing, extracted the internal speaker and microphone, sequestering them in separate drawers. The base unit I swaddled in a thick towel, shoving it deep into the bottom drawer of a locked filing cabinet. This was madness, I told myself throughout the day. Sleep-starved hallucinations, a hidden power source I'd simply failed to find. Logic battled encroaching dread. That night, however, deadlines held me captive once more. I forced the phone from my mind, focusing on the screen's glow. Around 1:30 a.m., a faint scratching emanated from the filing cabinet. My heart lurched. I ignored it, fingers flying across the keyboard. The scratching intensified, metal grating against metal. Hands trembling, I rose, unlocked the cabinet, and pulled open the bottom drawer. The towel lay discarded. The phone base had shifted, nestled against the back panel as if trying to burrow deeper. As I watched, paralyzed, the rotary dial began to spin, clicking softly, 0 to 9, then 9 to 5, a nonsensical sequence. My mouth went desert dry, the pulse in my head a deafening drum. Then 3 distinct piercing rings shattered the silence. I slammed the drawer shut, breath ragged. The ringing stopped. Jacket snatched, I bolted from the office, unable to endure another second. In my car, I sat for 10 minutes, staring up at the darkened windows, the only light the faint glow from my desk lamp. From the outside, utter stillness reigned. The next day, exorcism felt like the only option. Retrieving the phone from its metal prison, I stuffed it unceremoniously into a cardboard box and carried it outside. The dumpster behind the building beckoned. A sense of unease warred with relief as I heaved the box over the rusted lip. It landed with a muffled thud atop a mound of refuse. A sigh escaped me, a fragile temporary peace. That evening, I stayed home, seeking refuge in the mundane glow of the television. Around midnight, my mobile phone buzzed. Unknown number. A jolt of pure adrenaline shot through me. Decline. Minutes later it buzzed again. Same anonymous caller. Silenced. Then a text notification illuminated the screen. Just my name. Elias. My chest constricted. Nausea surged. Another text followed. Fragmented phrases about corridors, dripping water. The whispers from the static, now digitized. I powered down the phone, sinking into the darkness, tremors racking my body. Sleep was a distant shore. Morning light forced me back to the office. A moment of dizzying relief washed over me. The desk was clear. I tried to immerse myself in work, but around lunchtime my gaze snagged on it. The phone sat in its accustomed spot, brazen, boxless, unpackaged. My stomach plummeted. Hesitantly, I approached, touched the cool, familiar metal of the bell housing. Flipping it over revealed the grime of the dumpster, clinging stubbornly. Thrown away, returned. A final, desperate strategy formed. Total annihilation. Armed with a small screwdriver, I began its dissection. Screws yielded, the bottom panel came away, the bell assembly was extracted, the rotary mechanism painstakingly pulled apart. I laid each component out on a cloth across my desk, mundane, rusty pieces of metal and plastic. Nothing extraordinary. A fragile sense of control settled over me as I returned to my laptop. 2 hours later, a glance over my shoulder stopped my breath. The phone sat fully assembled, upright, as if untouched. Screws tight, dial intact. I stared, throat constricting, a tingling numbness spreading through my hands. Slowly, reverently, I lifted the receiver. Immediate static, thick and expectant. Then the voice, slow, rasping my name. It spoke of places unknown to me, painting vivid pictures. A house with fractured panes, a sitting room choked with shrouded furniture, a dusty chandelier hanging precariously over a broken floorboard. Details I'd never witnessed, yet could see with terrifying clarity. It described the cloying scent of damp velvet curtains, the phantom sensation of a cold draft swirling around my ankles. Nausea churned. I slammed the receiver down, breath coming in shallow gasps. The subsequent days descended into a waking nightmare. The phone rang at unpredictable hours. Ignoring it only provoked louder, longer peals, or the unnerving sight of the dial spinning silently, clicking out its cryptic messages. When I did answer, sometimes only shrill, ear-piercing static greeted me. Other times, the quiet whispers returned, delving deeper, recounting the specifics of my nightmares. The corridor, the ceaseless dripping, the pervasive mold. It even described my paralysis within the dream, the way I stood rooted, unable to flee. A cold sweat would bead on my skin, my hands shaking too violently to maintain a grip on the receiver. The ringing became a physical presence, echoing not just in the room, but inside my own skull. I tried banishing it to the locked storage room down the hall. Minutes later, its insistent ring would summon me back to my desk. Upon checking the storage room, I'd find it empty. The phone inexplicably returned to its post. A constant pressure built behind my eyes. One evening, seeking escape, I went straight home. My mobile phone became its new conduit. Calls from numbers displaying only static. Texts filled with random symbols interspersed with the recurring words, corridor, water, Elias. Each notification sent my heart rate soaring, tightened the vice around my chest, made my head pound. I resorted to shutting it off, sitting in the oppressive dark, shaky and utterly drained. Who could I tell? What words could possibly convey this creeping, impossible horror? An antique phone, unplugged, rings, whispers my nightmares, and defies destruction. The notion was laughable, insane. Subtle shifts began to pervade the office itself. The air near the desk felt unnaturally cold. Overhead fluorescent lights developed a nervous flicker. Faint clicking sounds punctuated the late-night silence. Sometimes, a single ring, abruptly cut off, would be followed by the distinct impression of footsteps receding down the empty hallway. Each time I investigated, I found nothing. My nerves frayed. I became jumpy, my speech hesitant. Colleagues remarked on my pallor. Working too hard, I'd mumble. Every night at 2 a.m., the ritual resumed. Static, my name. A new detail whispered from the unseen place. The curve of a shadowed archway, a window glazed with grime, warped into an odd shape. Each description felt terrifyingly real, palpable, evoking phantom smells and chills. Glimpses of somewhere I was never meant to see. A second attempt at disassembly proved futile. It simply reformed itself. Burying it beneath stacks of old files muffled the ring only slightly. Driving it across town and abandoning it in a refuse-strewn alley resulted in its reappearance on my desk hours later, bearing the stains of its brief exile. A silent mockery. My appetite vanished. My throat felt perpetually tight. Hours were lost simply staring at the inert object, waiting, anticipating its next move. The dial might spin languidly, soft clicks fraying my sanity. A single soft ding from the bell, then pregnant silence. Stop, I found myself whispering to the empty air. The fear began to morph, twisting into something more profound. The voice on the line started sounding closer, less distant. Picking up the receiver, the breathing felt intimate, as if exhaled directly beside my ear. A phantom breeze would stir the hair at my temple. More than once I spun around, convinced someone stood silently behind me. Always emptiness. The breaking point arrived subtly. The phone rang, but the clock on my monitor read 1:59 a.m., 1 minute early. I lifted the receiver. "I don't need this line anymore," the voice rasped. Ice flooded my veins. My fingers clenched the bakelite. Cold sweat bloomed on my forehead. My heart hammered against my ribs. A desperate prisoner. "Almost ready," it whispered, "to speak without this." My hand trembled so violently I could barely return the receiver to its cradle. The air felt thick, unbreathable. Now, I sit here. The office is steeped in late-night silence. The phone remains quiet, yet my eyes are drawn to it constantly. A constricting band tightens around my chest. My head throbs. Concentration is impossible. The lights flicker overhead. Every creak of the building, every distant siren, makes my body tense. That last message echoes. I don't need this line anymore. It implies another way. I fear closing my eyes, terrified I'll hear the whisper directly in my ear, feel its presence looming just behind my chair. Home offers no sanctuary. This office is a cage. I feel irrevocably trapped. Each buzz of my silenced mobile sends a jolt through me. Every imagined click from the rotary dial brings a fresh wave of cold sweat. I'm simply waiting, watching the numbers on the screen tick closer. It is 1 minute to 2. My hands shake above the keyboard. The phone sits still. I brace myself, not for the ring, but for what might replace it. A voice materializing in the room, a whisper at my shoulder, footsteps drawing near the window. There's nothing left to do. No way to stop it. Any second now, the silence might break, not with a bell, but with a voice beside me, inside me. And there will be no receiver to slam down, no wire to cut, no escape. I can only wait, heart pounding, for the connection to be made. My mother's locket, glinting against the bedroom plaster where no locket should be, sparked an immediate, unfair accusation. Clara. Who else possessed a key? But her voice over the phone, thick with sleep and bafflement, dissolved my certainty. She hadn't crossed my threshold in over a week. That's when the disquiet began, a cold tendril curling in my gut. Phone still pressed numbly to my ear. I stared. The burnished bronze disc swayed almost imperceptibly from a nail I'd stake my life hadn't punctured that wall the night before. Morning sun ignited the intricate knotwork, whirls like petrified eddies in metal. 15 years it had resided in the bedside drawer's velvet dark, since Alara, my mother, pressed its surprising weight into my palm in that sterile hospital room. "Keep it safe," she'd rasped, her final breath fogging the words. And I had. It was a silent ritual, the drawer sliding open morning and night, a glimpse of its coiled chain. Sometimes my fingers traced the endless loops, seeking solace in its cool solidity. Never displayed, never risked. Yet here it hung, brazen as a gallery piece. I plucked it from the nail, the metal instantly leaching warmth from my skin. The nail itself looked ancient, rusted, yet this wall bore my own paintwork from last summer, smooth, unblemished. I returned the locket to its familiar darkness, tried to rationalize the anomaly away. A lapse, a half-dream action before coffee. The mind, after all, is a notorious trickster. Before sleep claimed me, I documented its confinement. A photo snapped, the locket nestled amongst defunct chargers and brittle receipts in the drawer. Proof against morning phantoms. But dawn revealed it again, pinned to the wall 6 inches askew from yesterday's violation. This time, raw panic surged. I tore it down, the chain snarling like a metallic viper. My pulse hammered against my ribs as I inspected the plaster. Yesterday's nail vanished. No puncture, no dust, no scar. As if it had never existed. Work was impossible. I feigned illness, spending hours crawling through the apartment, a forensic investigator in my own home. Windows latched, deadbolts steadfast, no splintered wood nor telltale scuffs. Only that damnable locket disturbed the mundane order. Clara arrived that evening, summoned by my fractured texts. My frayed state was obvious. The sleeplessness, the jumpiness at every floorboard creak. Perhaps, she suggested, turning the heavy disc over and over in her hand, her brow furrowed. You should learn its story, have it valued, find its provenance. My mother. Hilera, she only called it ancestral, I admitted. Passed down her line. Clearly it's more storied than that, Clara murmured, holding it aloft. These markings. Celtic, yes, but dissonant. And the weight. She was right. It was barely 2 inches across, yet possessed the heft of leaded crystal. The metal defied easy classification. Not quite brass, not quite gold. And the patterns, prolonged focus made the eyes swim, like attempting to map an Escher staircase into reality. It needs proper containment, I declared, the words feeling inadequate. Until I understand this. My closet harbored a small floor safe, usually reserved for emergency cash and vital papers. Tonight, it became the locket's prison. Clara watched, her expression a mixture of worry and disbelief, as I spun the combination lock, tested the handle thrice. Promise you'll call, she urged at the door, her gaze lingering, likely questioning my sanity. Sleep was a shallow, troubled pool. Around 3, the witching hour, paranoia drove me to the closet. Flashlight beam confirmed the locket's presence, inert within the steel box. Yet morning brought the ultimate violation. It lay upon my pillow, cold metal inches from my face. I recoiled violently, tangling in sheets, cracking an elbow against the nightstand, the sharp pain a brutal anchor to this escalating nightmare. The locket rested on the white cotton, its chain a dormant serpent. Trembling fingers worked the safe's dial. Locked. Inside, cash, passport, birth certificate. Everything accounted for, save the impossible artifact. Clara's phone went straight to a sterile greeting. My boss received a choked explanation. Family emergency. A half-truth, perhaps. Hours bled into online rabbit holes. Celtic artifacts, anomalous object behavior, poltergeists, mostly digital chaff, ghost forums and amateur speculation. Then a scholarly footnote, dry academic prose discussing Celtic relics with peculiar reputed traits. It mentioned a Siwilwaer's pledge, a wanderer's token, legend claimed, that defied confinement, forever seeking its ordained placement. The text remained infuriatingly obscure on specifics. Clara's reply buzzed late afternoon. Coming over. Stay calm. She arrived bearing peace offerings of takeaway cartons and a look of quiet resolve. All right, Elias, she commanded, clearing the coffee table. From the beginning. Every detail. I recounted the escalating strangeness while she meticulously logged notes on her phone. You're positive. No sleepwalking. No new medications, she probed gently. Positive, I insisted. The safe is untouched. Security footage shows nothing. She tapped her screen thoughtfully. And Ilara, your mother? Did she ever hint? I recalled the hospital pallor, the lucid gaze as she gave it to me. Keep it safe, I echoed. But perhaps safe didn't mean locked away. Perhaps it meant respected? Clara reached for the locket, still sitting on the table where I'd left it after retrieving it from the pillow. It feels different, she breathed, her eyes widening slightly. Warm. Indeed, the metal that had always felt cool now held a subtle, living heat. As we watched, transfixed, the delicate chain stirred, flowing like quicksilver between her fingers. She gasped, dropping it. It struck the rug with a disproportionately heavy thud. Silence stretched. Okay, Clara whispered, her voice tight. This is happening. I retrieved the locket. It was cool once more. Her family, I said, the thought solidifying. She barely spoke of them, said they were gone, but her papers, maybe there's a clue. A dusty archive box from storage yielded mostly mundane life remnants, bills, photos, brittle letters. Then nestled at the bottom, swaddled in tissue, a small, leather-bound volume. Its pages, sere and yellowed, bore generations of handwriting, discussing, again and again, the pledge, the wayfarer, the token. We deciphered tales of attempts to sell it, only for it to reappear. Efforts to destroy it, futile. One ancestor chronicled dropping it into the churning sea, only to wake with it inexplicably coiled around his throat. This is madness, I muttered, dragging hands through my hair. It cannot be. But it is, Elias, Clara said softly. We saw it move. The question is, what now? We turned pages until we found Ilara's script, dated mere months before her end. The pledge has claimed Elias. I see its resonance with him, even now. I pray he understands when its nature reveals itself. The carrying is no burden, but a duty, a tether to origins deeper than knowing. Elias, if you read this, trust the current. Trust yourself. I glanced at the locket on the table. As if sensing my gaze, it emitted a faint vibration, the chain chiming softly against the wood. She knew, I breathed. She knew this would happen. Clara's hand found mine. What will you do? I lifted the locket. It felt warm again, a responsive warmth, not alarming. The knotwork seemed less chaotic, resolving into an intricate, unbroken path. I'll do as she wished, I told Clara, my voice steadier now. I'll trust it. From my toolbox, I retrieved a nail. Choosing a spot on the bedroom wall, the very height it had first appeared, I tapped it home. The plaster yielded readily, almost eagerly. I hung the locket, carefully smoothing the chain. There, I murmured, stepping back. Where you belong. That night, peace settled over me, deep and restorative. Morning found the locket undisturbed, catching the nascent light exactly where I'd placed it. It seemed content. In the ensuing weeks, it remained. No more phantom migrations, no alarming appearances. Sometimes, a subtle sway betrayed its presence when the air was utterly still. Occasionally, in the dead of night, I'd glimpse a faint luminescence emanating from it, casting dancing knotwork shadows. I delved deeper into the journal, absorbing the chronicle of my ancestors. Stories surfaced of the pledge diverting bearers from unseen perils, of dreams where the patterns coalesced into maps or warnings. Clara, ever patient, helped decipher the older Gaelic passages, tales of its origin as a link, a conduit bestowed by those before, never meant for concealment, but for communion. The dreams began for me, too. Fleeting visions of the locket's patterns shifting, hinting at meanings that evaporated upon waking. More tangible were the sudden, inexplicable compulsions. A detour leading me to avert a collision, an urge drawing me to an obscure bookshop where texts illuminated the locket's lore. It hadn't been malevolent, merely insistent. It sought its rightful place, not in shadow, but in sight, free to fulfill its purpose. Ilara's words resonated anew. Keep it safe wasn't about possession, but permission. 6 months later, Clara brought her life into my apartment. The locket, she admitted, had become a familiar presence, almost comforting. Like a very quiet, very ancient housemate, she quipped, sometimes directing questions towards it before making a decision. It still shifts, occasionally. Not escapes, but signals, angling towards the door before unexpected guests arrive, turning windowward before a storm. Once it dropped from its nail without cause. That same day, a potentially lethal gas leak was discovered in the building. I began adding my own script to the journal, weaving my experiences into the ancestral tapestry. One day, the pledge will choose another, and I will pass both locket and legacy on. But for now, it hangs sentinel on my bedroom wall, a quiet guardian. The carrying is no burden, my mother wrote. She understood. It is a gift, a tangible piece of the world's enduring mystery. Sometimes the best thing we can do is accept them, learn from them, and let them guide us where they will. Every dawn, my eyes find it. Sometimes its metallic surface seems to offer a silent greeting. And every night I echo Ilara's final counsel, a mantra whispered into the dark. Trust the current. Trust yourself. And I do. Fear isn't my usual companion. Solitude suits me. My apartment here in Ashworth breathes with my solitary rhythm, a quiet counterpoint to the city's hum. I appreciate the autonomy, the lack of obligation. My routine is simple, anchored by evening runs through the nearby park. A familiar exhale, a green lung close enough to feel like an extension of home. It was always a sanctuary, its paths worn smooth by my own passage, its quiet corners, places of peace. Until the familiar soured, curdling into something else entirely just a few weeks ago. The evening was crystalline, one of those rare gifts where the air holds a perfect coolness, and the sinking sun bleeds long, dramatic shadows across the grass. Ideal conditions for the rhythm of breath and footfall. My usual circuit commenced, through the main arched gateway, over the quaint stone bridge spanning the creek, a loop embracing the small lake, then back. The park sighed, emptying itself for the night. Only a scattering of solitary runners and dog walkers remained, islands in the deepening twilight. Tranquility, as it always was. Minutes into my stride, a discordant note appeared. A figure approaching on the path, moving against my direction. He registered as alien, unfamiliar in this space I knew so intimately after months of repetition. A deep hoodie was pulled low, obscuring his features despite the mild air, and dark denim swallowed the last vestiges of light. Not the typical attire for a park stroll. A flicker of oddness, noted and dismissed as I maintained my pace. Yet as our paths converged and I passed, a prickle crawled up my spine. The distinct visceral sensation of being watched. A quick sideways flick of my eyes confirmed it. He hadn't averted his gaze. Beneath the cowl's shadow, his head remained angled pointedly towards me. Disquiet settled, a cold pebble in my gut. But I pushed onward, assuming he was just another transient presence. But completing my loop, returning towards the entrance, I froze. He stood sentinel by the gate where I'd begun. The geometry felt wrong, impossible. My circuit had taken mere minutes. He couldn't have returned so swiftly unless he'd reversed course immediately after passing me. I reasoned he was merely lingering, yet something about his stillness felt deliberate, watchful, as if he were an actor waiting for a cue. I forced the unease down, finished my run, and retreated home, chiding myself for paranoia. It was nothing. The next time, drawn back by routine, the feeling returned, amplified. Dusk smeared the edges of the world, the park even more deserted. And there he was, near the entrance again, a statue carved from shadow. Not walking, not observing his surroundings, just still, watching. My pulse hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in my chest. I tried to shrink into myself, focusing on the pounding of my feet, refusing to meet that unseen gaze as I ran past. Rounding the lake, a furtive glance back revealed emptiness. Foolish relief washed over me, quickly receding. As I neared the exit, a flicker of movement at the path's edge resolved into his form. He hadn't moved from his vigil, didn't react as I approached. Yet I felt his attention pinned to me like an insect. I lengthened my stride, feigning obliviousness, the weight of his stare a physical pressure on my back. Back in my apartment, the lock clicking shut offered little solace. The image burned behind my eyes, the hooded stillness, the unwavering focus. I tried to rationalize, to laugh it away. Just some guy. Parks are public spaces. But the wrongness persisted, a dissonant hum beneath the surface of logic. A week bled into a grim ballet. Each attempt to deviate, altering my timing, hoping to slip through the net of his presence, met the same silent counterpoint. He materialized inevitably near the threshold, a constant, watchful presence. A chilling synchronicity began to feel less like coincidence and more like knowledge. Did he anticipate my rhythm? One late afternoon, desperate, I plunged into the park from its far flank, near the lake, reversing my usual flow. A fragile hope bloomed in the unfamiliar territory. For the first half of my run, the paths remained clear. Perhaps I had imagined the pattern. But as I rounded the final bend, nearing the main entrance from the opposite side, my blood ran cold. He strolled ahead, further down the path this time, moving in the same direction as me. Instinctively I slowed, hesitant to overtake him. The moment my pace faltered, he stopped walking and melted sideways onto the grassy verge, resuming that posture of pure, unnerving observation. A cold knot tightened deep in my stomach. Pursuit or bizarre pattern, the distinction blurred into irrelevance. It felt predatory. Right then, I decided. No more evening runs. The creeping dread wasn't worth it. Mornings, I told myself. Bright daylight would surely dispel these shadows. Yet a few days later, drawn by some defiant foolhardiness, I found myself back in the park as twilight thickened. Stubbornness, perhaps, or a need to prove my fears absurd. I resolved to stick to the well-lit artery of the main path, a shorter loop close to the entrance. For a while, emptiness greeted me. Had I finally broken the cycle? Had I worked myself into a state over nothing? Then halfway through my abbreviated circuit, I saw him, ahead, standing on a narrow side trail that snaked away into a more secluded, wooded section. His form was half eclipsed by the trees, a silhouette poised at the edge of the known path. My breath hitched. My heart began its frantic drumming. I fought the urge to stare, to acknowledge him, convinced he was waiting for just that. I forced my legs onward, eyes fixed ahead, feigning blindness to the figure lurking at the periphery. Yet I felt him, a palpable tension emanating from the tree line. As I drew level with the side trail's junction, he flowed from the shadows onto the main path, turning deliberately towards me. A vice clamped around my ribs. He wasn't merely walking, he was angling across the path, a clear, calculated move to intercept my trajectory. Panic flared. Turn back. Too obvious, too much like prey confirming the hunter's instinct. I kept moving forward, trying to project calm I didn't feel, acutely aware of his approach, his unseen eyes. As we were about to pass, he shifted again, cutting directly into my line, forcing me to halt or collide. I stopped, mind racing, the path ahead now partially blocked by his silent form. My pace quickened as I started walking again, angling slightly away. His instantly mirrored it, a phantom echo just behind me, staying close enough that I could almost feel the displacement of air. A sideways glance confirmed the hooded head, the steady, unnervingly quiet tread. What now? My thoughts scattered like startled birds. Ahead, a small clearing gave way to another, less used trail. One I dimly recalled looped eventually towards the road. It was poorly defined, unfamiliar territory, but it was my only option besides direct confrontation or turning back towards the deeper park. A gamble. I plunged sideways, veering sharply off the main path and into the tangled undergrowth lining the secondary trail. Instantly, the quiet steps behind erupted into heavy, rapid impacts. Crashing through the brush, leaves whipping at my face, the sound of his pursuit was undeniable, closing the distance. No doubt remained. This was a chase. Raw flight took over, lungs screaming for air, legs pumping like pistons fueled by adrenaline. I scrambled along the twist-in path. Branches clawed at my arms, the narrow track plunging deeper into the trees. Panic was a physical taste in my mouth. The rhythm of his pursuit, a terrifying drumbeat just behind me, seemed to gain with every frantic stride. Just as my muscles screamed for cessation, a glimmer pierced the dense foliage, the faint sodium glow of streetlights filtering through the trees, the distant muffled sound of cars, the road, so close. I summoned a final desperate surge, legs trembling, lungs burning. I could feel his presence, immense and immediate, almost upon me. But as my feet hit the uneven ground at the very edge of the trail, the pounding footsteps behind me simply ceased. I didn't slow, bursting through the final screen of leaves and stumbling onto the asphalt shoulder of the road. Headlights swept past. I waved my arms wildly, a voiceless plea for witness, for sanctuary, but the car continued on, indifferent. I spun back towards the tree line, expecting him to emerge, silhouetted against the dark woods. Nothing. The trail mouth gaped, dark and vacant. He had vanished as silently, as inexplicably as he'd appeared. I stood there trembling, gulping ragged breaths, listening to the frantic thrumming in my own ears, scanning the impenetrable shadows. Silence answered, amplifying the sudden emptiness. Eventually, shaky legs carried me home, the familiar streets feeling alien and exposed. The park remains untouched territory now, a place excised from my mental map. I haven't been back. I can't. The thought alone conjures the same cold dread, the visceral fear. Who was he? What engine drove his silent, relentless focus? I possess no answers, only the certainty that he was following me, that the chase was real, the intent palpable. I know that had I not broken into that desperate run, the outcome might have been irrevocably different. Now the simple thought of jogging, once a release, tightens that cold knot in my stomach. The fear remains, a phantom presence at my back, whispering that somewhere, in the shadows of that familiar green space, the Watcher waits. It is a haunted landscape I will never tread again. The memory clings. That morning air, bone dry, breathless. Sky a vacant blue sheet. Just me and the ribbon of packed earth snaking between walls of desiccated brush. Laces cinched, plastic flask cool in my palm, phone secured to my bicep. A brief circuit, 2 miles perhaps, before the sun truly bared its teeth. Solitude was the trail's signature. No glint of parked chrome at the trailhead, no fellow travelers encountered. Utterly expected, utterly still. My rhythm began slow, a deliberate cadence coaxing warmth into muscles, breath measured in, out, the faint percussion of grit beneath worn soles, gaze fixed ahead. Flanking the path, tall grasses stood sentinel, stiff and unmoving in the vacuum of wind. A low hum of insects vibrated near my ears, punctuated by the far-off punctuation of bird song. Otherwise, profound silence reigned. 10 minutes dissolved. Limbs supple now, I urged my pace onward. Old shoes telegraphed every stone through thinning soles. Calves pulled taut. A sheen of perspiration bloomed. A sip of water, a conscious release of tension in my shoulders, the rhythm of breath regained. Then dissonance, a fragile sound, barely there, a sibilance brushing against my left ear. I throttled back, scanned the periphery. Nothing. The grasses, dense and high, could conceal fauna, but a human form? Only if prone. My eyes found no disturbance. Pausing, straining my ears, I caught only the rush of blood in my head, the drone of flies. A trick of acoustics, perhaps. I dismissed it, resumed my stride. Scarcely a minute passed before the sound returned, still hushed, indistinct. A glance back revealed only the empty trail receding. Ignore it. Maintain pace. Then chillingly clear, Elara. My name, breathed intimately close. yet the air beside me remained void. A male timbre, perhaps, muffled by its own softness. It emanated from the verge mere inches into the dense reeds. I halted, retraced a few steps, peered into the vegetation. Waist-high stalks, a tapestry of green and ochre, thick and obscuring. Parting them with tentative fingers revealed only packed dirt, scattered stones. No sign of intrusion. Silence pressed in. A bead of sweat traced a path down my temple. I swiped it away with a forearm, blinking against the sudden dryness in my eyes. "Hello?" The word burst out, unnaturally loud in the stillness, ragged at the edges. Silence answered. I remained rooted, muscles coiled, wrestling with the possibility of auditory illusion. Retreat beckoned. The wrongness of that disembodied voice resonated deep. Yet could it be the wind sighing through unseen hollows? An echo carried from afar? Rationalizations warred with instinct. Time was slipping, the sun climbing. Forward. Finish the run. I forced my legs into motion, concentrating fiercely on the simple mechanics. Breath, stride, gaze, ahead. Oblivion proved elusive. Minutes later, the sibilance returned, gaining subtle strength, clarity. Ilara. A pause. Ilara. Always from the left, from the impenetrable wall of grass. A frantic glance while in motion captured no flicker of movement, no silhouette, no face. My run decayed to a jog, then a walk, culminating in a dead stop. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, fueled by more than exertion. Stillness descended again, thick with tension. Then the whisper resumed its insidious work, soft yet relentless. "Ilara, Ilara, Ilara." A slow, deliberate cadence. A primal urge to scream, to demand revelation, died in my parched throat. Swallowing hard against the dryness, I managed, "Who's there?" Only my name answered, accompanied now by the faint, chilling intimacy of an exhale near my cheek. Drawn by a morbid curiosity, I edged closer, plunging my hand into the dry thatch. Brittle stalks scraped against skin. Earth, diminutive weeds, pebbles, nothing more. A tentative kick at the base yielded no reaction. Retreating, my gaze swept the path. Only my own fading prints marred the dust. The air hung heavy, inert. No engine sounds, no human voices, only the ceaseless susurration from the grass. I began walking, slowly, eyes locked on the verge. The whisper paced me, an invisible companion. It neither faltered nor faded. Ilara, Ilara, Ilara. An unending invocation. "What do you want?" I pleaded into the void. The sole reply, my name, repeated. A prickling sensation crawled over my skin. The fine hairs on my arms lifted. Tension seized my neck, my stomach twisting into a knot. Naked vulnerability washed over me. The acrid tang of my own fear sweat filled my nostrils, my breath catching in ragged hitches. My grip tightened on the water flask until the plastic groaned. Ignore it. Run. Distance might sever this phantom tether. I launched forward, pushing hard, feet churning dust from the parched earth. Impossibly, the whisper matched my velocity, a constant presence just beyond sight. Glancing left revealed only the impassive wall of grass, utterly still. No rustle, no displaced stems, no sound of passage. How could anything occupy that space, voice my name, yet leave no trace? The sheer physics defied reason. Another half-mile devoured, the spectral companion unwavering. I couldn't sustain this flight. Skidding to a halt, I spun towards the grass. I don't know who you are. Show yourself. The demand hung in the dead air, answered only by the soft insistence, Ilara. My pulse throbbed, a frantic drum against the cage of my ribs, legs leaden, chest constricted. My hand fumbled for the phone strapped to my arm. Call who? Emergency services? Report a disembodied voice? Derision? Disbelief? That would be the response. Besides, the screen displayed only stark emptiness. No service. Useless. I knelt again, parting the stalks with meticulous care, searching for any anomaly. Dirt, scurrying insects, the loamy scent of dry earth, minuscule weeds clinging to life. Nothing. The whisper seemed diffuse, emanating not from a single point, but from the very essence of the overgrown verge. Rising, backing away, unease solidified into dread. My face flushed hot. My mouth felt like sandpaper. I sipped water, hand trembling, spilling a few drops. Walking slowly, eyes glued to the left, the whisper shadowed me. Stop, it continued. Move, it matched me. I experimented, crossing to the path's far right edge. The sound diminished slightly, a barely perceptible thinning, but persisted. Returning to the center, it regained strength. Closest to the left edge, it peaked. Still a whisper, yet undeniable. Always my name. Always that low, eerily calm male tone. No anger, no urgency. Its placidity was the most terrifying aspect, a violation of natural fear. Then a flicker of memory. The small folding knife nestled in my pocket. A cheap thing, rarely carried. My fingers closed around it, thumb flicking the blade open. The small click was swallowed by the silence. It offered scant comfort, a pathetic talisman against the unseen, but I gripped it tightly, knuckles white. Holding it low, I faced the grass. Stop, I commanded, voice thin. Just stop. The whisper breathed my name again, perhaps slower, more deliberate. A drop of sweat detached from my chin, darkening the dust at my feet. Raw instinct screamed, escape. The main road, civilization, that was the goal. I broke into a run, faster now, fueled by adrenaline and dread. Legs pumped mechanically, ignoring the fire in my throat, the rigid set of my shoulders. For 10 agonizing minutes, the whisper ran with me, an unwavering phantom. Glances confirmed the grass remained static, ordinary. The voice, constant in volume and tone, offered only my name, refusing release. Lungs burned, feet protested, but I narrowed my focus to the immediate, one foot striking earth after the other. "Leave me alone," I gasped. "What do you want?" "Go away." Futile pleas swallowed by the oppressive quiet, answered only by the relentless loop. "Ilara, Ilara." Then salvation appeared. The junction ahead, marked by a weathered wooden post pointing towards the road. A wave of profound relief washed through me. I veered onto the side path. Here the vegetation thinned, the ground grew rockier, firmer beneath my battered shoes. The whisper persisted initially, but within moments, a change. It began to recede, losing its unnerving proximity. A backward glance towards the main trail, the tall grass still loomed, radiating menace. I paused, listening intently. Fainter now. 30 paces more, it was a mere thread of sound. Another 30, and silence reclaimed its territory. Utter, blessed silence. I stood, gasping, drawing deep, ragged breaths, listening. Only my own labored breathing, the drone of unseen insects. No voice, no celebration bloomed, just a residual tremor shaking my frame. My gaze fell to my legs, coated in dust, flecked with grass fragments, filthy shoes, sweat-darkened armband. A dull ache began to pulse behind my eyes. The knife clicked shut, returned to its pocket. I drained the last lukewarm water and began the trudge towards the road, eyes fixed firmly on the ground before me. Looking back felt impossible. Comprehension eluded me. Thought itself felt dangerous. 15 minutes later, the blessed sight of asphalt. A car sped past, a fleeting emblem of normalcy. Relief, potent but incomplete. My phone flickered to life with a single bar of signal. The time displayed mocked the eternity I felt had passed. Barely 40 minutes since I'd started. Hours compressed into that short span. I followed the road's shoulder back to the deserted turnout where my car waited. A small metal sanctuary. Inside, doors locked, engine humming. I pulled away, resisting the urge to glance in the rearview mirror at the trail's silent mouth. That day bled into evening under a cloud of deliberate avoidance. The whisper defied explanation, resisted narrative. Whom could I tell? How could I articulate the inexplicable? That trail remains untrodden by me since. My runs now trace different paths. Yet the memory persists. The arid air, the profound stillness shattered by that intimate, unseen voice. Hilara. It lingers, a phantom echo tied to the prickle of sweat on my back, the clench of fear in my gut. No answers surfaced then, none now. Escape was enough. Venture back. Unthinkable. Some mysteries are best left undisturbed, buried beneath the silent grass. The stadium, vast and hollow, breathed a profound silence where hours before, thunderous applause had lived. Now only the low thrum of the emergency lights and the rhythmic scrape of my own boots on concrete disturbed the quiet that pressed in from all sides. Elias, that's me. For 3 years, I've walked these echoing corridors and deserted stands for riverside security. Night watch. Not exactly the stuff of legends, but it kept the lights on, paid the rent. Tonight, though, the familiar emptiness felt charged. Shadows pooled deeper than usual, clinging possessively to corners, and the wind sighing through the upper decks seemed to carry phantom whispers just beyond the threshold of hearing. Something felt coiled and watchful in the dark. Midnight tolled, a distant muffled chime swallowed by the stadium's immensity. I was making my usual perimeter sweep when I saw it. Hunkered in the asphalt sea of Lot E, a bruised panel van materialized where nothing had stood 60 minutes prior. Opaque windows guarded its secrets, rust blooming like old bloodstains across its faded, indeterminate gray skin. Sal, I murmured into the radio clipped to my shoulder, my voice instinctively tight. You clocking this derelict van in E-Lot? Wasn't there on the last pass? Static hissed back. A brief electronic sigh before Sal's voice, thin and tinny through the speaker, replied. Got eyes on it now, Eli. Still a stone from up here. Want me to hold focus? Affirmative, I confirmed, the word clipped. Going boots on ground for a closer look. Caution became a physical presence, tugging me forward step by deliberate step, my right hand instinctively finding the reassuring density of the stun gun holstered at my hip. Closer now, close enough to catch the faint, stale scent of oil and neglect hanging in the air around the vehicle. Just as I reached out, intending to rap sharply on the tinted glass, voices drifted from behind the stadium's concrete flank, muffled conspiratorial tones that snagged the night air. Instinct slammed me low, ducking behind the anonymous bulk of a nearby parked sedan. Ears straining, I filtered the sounds. Sure this is the spot? A gravelly voice, pitched low and rough. Yeah. Told you. Skeleton crew security. A second sharper voice answered, laced with impatience. Scores prime. We just gotta slip the watchmen, get in and out. Ice bloomed in my gut, cold and sharp. Not lost fans fumbling their way back, not bored kids looking for illicit thrills. This was calculated. This was trouble. Sal, I breathed into the radio transmitter, barely moving my lips, keeping my voice a low whisper. Code red situation developing. Multiple hostiles planning entry. Get PD rolling, but tell dispatch silent approach. Repeat, no lights, no sirens. A beat of charged silence crackled back. God, Elias, you certain about this? Stone cold certain, I hissed. Just make the call, now. I edged forward, hugging the shadows, trying to acquire a visual in the sparse illumination spilling from the parking lot lamps. 3 silhouettes, huddled near a service entrance tucked away from casual view. One figure worked intently at the lock mechanism while the other 2 scanned the empty lot, their posture tense. Then, a sickeningly soft snick echoed in the stillness. The heavy service door swung inward, swallowing the 3 figures into the stadium's deeper darkness. A choice presented itself, stark and immediate. Wait for the uncertain arrival of backup, or pursue. Prudence screamed, wait. But if they cut the camera feeds, if they reached the administrative safe before the police materialized, hesitation felt like failure. Drawing a deep, steadying breath, I slipped through the open doorway after them. Inside, my footsteps seemed unnaturally loud, echoing down the cavernous, empty corridors. Ahead, I could hear them, indistinct murmurs and the scuff of shoes bouncing off the hard concrete surfaces. They were angling towards the administrative offices, the nerve center, the location of the primary safe. Rounding a corner, keeping tight to the wall, I caught a fleeting glimpse. 3 men, all clad in dark, functional clothing, burdened with duffel bags. One man had the unmistakable shape of a handgun tucked into the back of his waistband. My mouth went instantly dry. This escalated far beyond my pay grade, beyond anything the training manuals covered. But retreat felt impossible now. I was committed. Maintaining a cautious distance, melting into the deeper pools of shadow, I shadowed their progress. They reached the main office suite, and the faint scratching sounds of lock-picking began anew. I keyed the radio again. Sal, they're at the admin office door. Update on PD? Ite 5 minutes, Sal whispered back, his voice strained. Eli, watch yourself, man. Seriously. The lock clicked open. The intruders vanished inside. I crept closer, positioning myself just outside the now open doorway, flattening myself against the corridor wall. Sounds drifted out. The rustle of papers, drawers being yanked open, frustrated mutters. Where the hell is it? One of them growled, the sound tight with tension. painting, another suggested curtly. Check behind the damn painting on the far wall. There followed a scraping sound, a muffled thud, then a low, triumphant chuckle that scraped against my nerves. Bingo. Got it. My heart plummeted. They'd found the safe. It was now or never. Adrenaline surged, cold and sharp, overriding fear. Taking one final deep breath, I pivoted into the doorway, stun gun raised and leading. "Freeze! Riverside security, don't move!" Heads snapped around, 3 pairs of eyes wide with startled fury in the dim office light. For a fraction of a second, the scene froze, a tableau of confrontation. Then chaos erupted. One man lunged directly at me, a blur of dark clothing and desperate intent. Simultaneously, the man I'd seen armed clawed at his waistband, reaching for steel. I squeezed the trigger on the stun gun. Blue-white energy spat across the small space, hitting the lunging man square in the chest. He crashed to the floor, limbs jerking violently. But the second man now had his weapon free, the dark muzzle gaping directly at my chest. Time stretched, thinning to a fragile, unbearable filament. I saw his finger whitening on the trigger. Could almost feel the impending impact. Then, crash. The outer corridor exploded behind me. The thunder of heavy boots pounding on tile, harsh shouts erupting, blinding beams of tactical flashlights slicing through the gloom, pinning the remaining intruders. Police, weapons down. Get down on the ground, now. The next few minutes dissolved into a controlled whirlwind of commands, the clink of handcuffs, and terse radio chatter. The remaining 2 suspects were swiftly subdued, faces pressed to the office carpet. I found myself deposited onto an office chair, the sharp scent of ozone from the stun gun still hanging in the air, giving my statement to a detective while paramedics shone pen lights in my eyes and checked my vitals. As the adrenaline tide ebbed, it left me shaky, the raw reality of the preceding minutes crashing down. A major heist, thwarted by chance and a desperate gamble. My gamble. The detective, a man named Kincaid, whose face seemed carved from granite and cynicism, regarded me with an unsettling mixture of admiration and exasperation. "You played Russian roulette with your life tonight, son," he rasped, his voice like gravel rolling downhill, though a grudging respect softened the harshest edges. "But thanks to your reckless stunt, you handed us this crew on a platter. Been chasing these particular jokers up and down the coast for months." I managed a nod, the world still feeling slightly tilted on its axis. "Just doing the job, detective." Kincaid let out a short, sharp bark of laughter that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Some job. You just helped us close a 6-month headache. Take the win when you get it." Later, much later, as the first tentative strokes of dawn painted the stadium's massive steel skeleton in hues of rose and bruised purple, Sal found me standing near the main exit gate, watching the police vehicles finally begin to disperse. He clapped a hand on my shoulder, a solid, grounding weight. "Elias, You're either forged from something harder than steel, or you're completely unhinged, he said, awe warring with palpable relief in his voice. Don't know if I'd have had the stones to charge in like that. A ghost of a smile touched my lips, feeling unfamiliar. Truthfully, Sal, me neither. But in that second, it felt necessary, the only move left. He nodded slowly, understanding passing between us without further words. Well, glad you're intact. Hell, maybe there's a commendation in this for you. We shared a brief, tension-releasing laugh at that absurdity. Driving home through the awakening city, the night replayed itself behind my eyes. A frantic reel of lurking shadows, disembodied whispers, heart-stopping fear, and the blinding, decisive flash of action. Just Elias, the night watchman, punching the clock. But for a handful of heart-stopping, eternity-long minutes, I had been something else. The fulcrum, the one who didn't break, the one who stood fast when the silence shattered. Exhaustion warred with a strange, electric hum beneath my skin. The familiar route home felt subtly altered, imbued with a new significance. Every shadow seemed deeper now, every unexpected sound potentially freighted with consequence. But surprisingly, I wasn't afraid. I knew now the measure of myself when the quiet calm was violently broken. I knew what lay dormant beneath the surface of the ordinary. As pale morning sunlight streamed through my bedroom window, I fell onto the mattress, a peculiar and profound sense of peace settling over me despite the lingering tremors. The night had left its indelible mark, changed the landscape of my inner world, and whatever tomorrow's darkness held, whatever unseen threats might lurk in the echoing silence of future shifts, I felt a quiet certainty I would meet it. Because sometimes, in the deepest, most desolate hours of the night, long after the crowds have dispersed and the world outside sleeps, that's precisely when the unexpected hero finds his moment. And tonight, however briefly, however unexpectedly, that hero had been me. Madness, surely, to invite a stranger in on such a night. A tempest clawed at the world outside, the highway a slick obsidian ribbon reflecting distorted constellations of oncoming lights. Driving felt like navigating a river of ink. Yet there he materialized, a solitary shape etched against the downpour at the road's frayed edge, thumb raised in that universal plea. A foolish flicker of kinship stirred. Hadn't I known such desperation once? The car sighed onto the shoulder, wipers thrashing a frantic rhythm against the glass. Hubris. That was my first transgression. The miasma preceded him, invading the car's sanctuary even as he wrenched the door open. An aroma of damp earth and something older, like mildewed pages in a forgotten cellar. He folded himself into the passenger seat with a low noise of gratitude, rivulets cascading from the cowl of his shapeless dark coat. A kindness, he rasped, his features lost in shadow. Few would pause when the heavens weep like this. No trouble, I offered, wrestling the car back into the current of the road, feigning an ease I didn't possess. Destination? Oh, onward. He gestured vaguely with a hand lost in a sodden glove. Not far. I'll signal the place. Wouldn't want to impose. I gave a curt nod, eyes fixed on the treacherous path ahead. The deluge intensified, hammering the roof like frantic fists. Distant veins of lightning pulsed, momentarily sketching the skeletal trees and desolate fields bordering our passage. We moved through the storm, cocooned in a silence broken only by the metronomic sweep of the wipers and the percussive drumming overhead. A fragile sense of normalcy began to settle, only to be shattered when he spoke again, his voice a low rumble, like stones grinding together. "And what chronicle do you carry?" My head snapped towards him, the question landing like a physical blow. My chronicle? A dry rustle, perhaps a chuckle, escaped the hood. "Indeed, your tale. What urgency propels you through this maelstrom? Are you journeying towards or fleeing from?" An unease coiled in my gut. His cadence held a peculiar weight. "Merely returning," I clipped out, aiming for indifference. "Business concluded?" "Ah, commerce," he murmured, a slow, deliberate nod. "Weighty matters, no doubt. Actions ripple outward, don't they? Consequences bloom." A frown tightened my features. This current felt dangerous. "Respectfully," I began, "I prefer to keep my affairs private." He raised his gloved hands, a gesture meant to soothe, but failing entirely. "No trespass intended, traveler. Only bridging the quiet. It's a long, shadowed road we share tonight." Silence reclaimed the car, but it was altered, thick now, charged with an unspoken static. My grip on the wheel became a vice, knuckles showing white beneath the skin. An age seemed to pass before his voice disturbed the quiet once more. "Have you pondered the skeins of choice? The infinitesimal shifts that reroute entire lives?" I offered no reply, willing him into silence. Futile. "Consider your stopping for me," he persisted, his tone drifting into an unnerving abstraction. "Had you sped past? Had my vigil been a mile further on? Destiny's weave is intricate, is it not?" "Perhaps," I conceded through gritted teeth, a desperate yearning rising to rewind time, to heed that initial warning bell in my soul. Lightning erupted again, this time intimately close, searing the car's interior with electric white. In that stark, fleeting brilliance, I saw beneath the concealing hood. Bile surged in my throat. His flesh possessed a waxy, near-luminous pallor, stretched taut over razor-sharp angles of bone. But the eyes were voids, utterly black, absorbing all light, devoid of sclera, iris, pupil, twin wells of infinite night that seemed to pierce straight through my facade into the trembling core beneath. An involuntary gasp must have escaped me, for he swiveled his head, fixing those abyssal points directly upon me. "Disturbed?" he inquired, his lips parting in a rictus that on any human countenance might approximate a smile. On him, it was the unsheathing of fangs. "No," I choked out, my pulse a frantic drum against my ribs. Thought I glimpsed something crossing the road. He inclined his head slowly, the ghastly smile unwavering. The mind conjures phantoms, does it not? Especially when darkness reigns. It paints illusions where none exist. Or perhaps, his voice dropped conspiratorially, Perhaps it finally permits us to see things in their true form. Cold sweat slicked my palms. Fear, raw and glacial, flooded my veins. He had to leave. Now. Consequences be damned. This is far enough, I think, I announced, fighting to keep the tremor from my voice. I need to let you out here. He tilted his head, a sharp avian movement. But our discourse has barely commenced. So much remains unsaid. I was poised to argue, to shout, when twin lights flared in the rearview mirror, headlights approaching with unnerving velocity. Relief surged, potent and immediate. Another vehicle. Witness. Safety. But the relief soured as the lights grew, swerving with drunken imprecision, bearing down directly upon us. "Look out!" The words tore from my throat as I wrenched the steering wheel violently to the right. Tires screamed on the slick asphalt. The world became a dizzying blur as the car pirouetted once, twice, before shuddering to a halt on the muddy shoulder, the offending vehicle rocketing past with a contemptuous blast of its horn. For a suspended moment, I sat trembling, sucking in ragged breaths, hands fused to the wheel. Then the chilling realization, my passenger. I turned, bracing for I didn't know what. The seat beside me was vacant, utterly, impossibly vacant. No lingering dampness marred the upholstery. No trace of the earthy, musty scent remained. Nothing. Stumbling out onto unsteady legs, I scanned the rain-lashed emptiness. The highway stretched away in both directions, a desolate, glistening void. There was only the storm, my stranded vehicle, and the oppressive weight of solitude. I stood there under the weeping sky for a long count, the deluge plastering my hair to my skull, trying to reconcile the impossible. Had my fraught nerves conjured the entire episode? A waking nightmare born of stress and solitude? Yet a deeper certainty resonated within me, cold and hard. What I had experienced, what I had seen, was terrifyingly real, defying all rational explanation. I had brushed against something ancient and predatory, and inexplicably survived. Retreating into the car, I slammed the locks home, the click echoing unnaturally loud. I drove, not daring to stop until the neon glow of the next town offered a fragile promise of sanctuary. The first motel, anonymous and bleak, became my refuge. Sleep was unthinkable. The image of those black, depthless eyes burned behind my eyelids. His words echoed in the sterile room. Choices, consequences, the intricate threads of fate. What if my initial fear had won? What if I'd ignored that rain-soaked figure? Would he simply have waited, patient and eternal, for the next solitary traveler on that benighted road? I no longer offer a passage to strangers. Night driving, especially under a weeping sky, is a torment I avoid. Sometimes on a long empty highway, a fleeting shape in the periphery, reflected in the mirror, mimics a figure by the roadside, thumb hopefully raised. I don't slow. My grip tightens on the wheel, my foot presses down, fleeing the memory, fleeing the chilling knowledge that settled upon me that night. The most insidious horrors aren't the ones that pursue, but the ones that patiently wait for an invitation. As I drive onward, questions orbit my thoughts like dark moons. How many others has he shared a ride with? How many journeys ended prematurely? Was my escape sheer luck, or a deliberate reprieve for some unknown purpose? Answers remain elusive, but this I know with chilling certainty. Should you find yourself navigating the darkness on a storm-racked night, and a lone figure emerges from the gloom, keep driving. Resist the urge. Deny the plea. Keep driving. And never, ever look back. You cannot know who or what seeks passage, and some passengers once welcomed inside embed themselves within you, becoming shadows that never truly depart.